It is your host, E.I. Smith. The date is Wednesday, May 1st, 2019, and the time is 3:47 p.m. I'm on the corner of West Bay Harbor Drive and 96th Street, having just left the library on West Bay Harbor Drive. I'm going to get some gang stalking caught on camera, including obstruction of movement, synchronization, and public service vehicles. Let's go. I've said in previous videos that gang stalking is a very multifaceted, multi-layered enterprise. There are military, semi-military, law enforcement, semi-law enforcement, corporate, and militia-like elements to gang stalking. A targeted individual is under 24-hour surveillance 7 days a week. And you'll have to forgive me. I forgot a very critical component of the gang stalking hierarchy. And it's very important, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to state them all again, but with the critical one I left out previously included. Okay, military, semi-military, law enforcement, semi-law enforcement. There's corporate, and there are religious elements to gang stalking. Religion is an important one, and it's one I almost left out because I talked about it at such length in my previous video. So all of these elements combine to make gang stalking what it is. And that is a nationwide program that has the ability to track targets everywhere they go and obstruct every aspect of that target's very life. Now, how does it work? Well, there are only 765,000 police officers on duty in the United States at any given time. And that is in a sea of 311 million United States citizens. Police officers can't be everywhere at all times, and it's not possible for them to monitor or surveil everyone. The same is true with the Department of Homeland Security, which has a hand in gang stalking itself. The same is true with the FBI, which has a hand in gang stalking itself. The same is true with the CIA, that has a hand in gang stalking itself. These agencies only employ enough people to make the agency run. They don't have enough people working for them to surveil everyone at every time. Now, I've said on previous videos that a person becomes a target because at some point, some federal law enforcement agency, in conjunction with some military agency, decides that that person is a threat to national security. And they need to be watched constantly and persistently. Not only with the eyes and ears of the agencies themselves, but with the eyes and ears of the people around the target, namely the gang stalkers. Now, do gang stalkers know they're gang stalkers? I believe that some do, and I believe that some don't. I believe some people just answer the call of duty however it comes to them. Some people are told to act on these cues or that cues, or be in this place at this location at this time, or that place at that time, and use these phrases and dress this kind of way and park here and this and that, and make this turn on this street when you get there without respect to the pedestrians. And again, I don't know all the ins and outs. I have not seen the blueprint of gang stalking, although one does exist. Just like there is a blueprint for MK Ultra and COINTELPRO, which are CIA and FBI programs respectively that have been documented and have information on those programs on their respective websites, FBI.gov, CIA.gov. Eventually, gang stalking will have its own website on one of these government intelligence websites as well. Now, in order for a person to be tracked the way a targeted individual must be tracked, it's going to take more than just local police. You're going to need local police. You're going to need local sheriff's deputies. You're going to need local bus drivers. You're going to need local taxis. You're going to need local trolley operators. You're going to need local EMS drivers. You're going to need local firefighters. You're going to need the locals, period. People on foot, people in boats, people in helicopters, people in planes, people in cars, people in trucks, people on motorcycles. You're going to need people of all races and ages. You're going to need men, women, and children. You're going to need teenagers. You're going to need college students. You're going to need criminals. You're going to need pastors. You're going to need preachers. And you're going to need private security firms that are employed by the U.S. government, state and local governments, that are employed by churches, that are employed by retail stores, that are employed by apartment complexes. See, all of these institutions I'm naming employ private security resources in order to keep an eye on targeted individuals. You see, you don't know it, but every time you go to Walmart, you're going into a small security firm. Okay? Walmart and any retail establishment, period, has private security operations that it uses to sniff out and report suspicious activity. Do you understand? And it's not always to the local police. Some of these retail establishments, some of these apartment complexes, some of these high-rise condominiums, okay, some of these yacht stations, they have private security contractors that they pay on a monthly basis to keep an eye on things and report suspicious activity to the FBI. Do you understand? There is a security mechanism that exists in the United States, the like of which has never been seen in the history of humanity. Now, every civilization throughout history, okay, the Celts, the Britons, the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, the Akkadians, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Scythians, the Mongols, the Israelites, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, all at some point had kingdoms and empires. And here's our first police vehicle. All of these nations had kingdoms and or empires. And they all had similar mechanisms, plainclothes, covert security mechanisms, where soldiers and other military officers would go out into the general public and shop, live, and go to work, raise a family, etc., etc. The family would be just a normal working class part of the society that is in question. And They be all the while reporting back to some military or intelligence agency within the empire what was going on. Who was who, what was what, who were the big merchants, who were the big thinkers, who were the popular men, who were the popular women, who were the great entertainers, who were the great enterprisers, who were the great priests and priestesses. Kind of like what we have in the United States. Everybody knows who their local celebrities are and why. Every church has a local celebrity. Every police department has a local celebrity. Every fire department has a local celebrity. Every retail operation has its celebrity. Every street in the United States has its celebrity. There's our second police vehicle. Coincidence is a coincidence, and gang stalking is gang stalking. I think police vehicles, routes, and here's some synchronized obstruction right here. And I'm not looking for sympathy or anybody to side with me. I have one goal and one goal only with these videos, because I'm more than capable of taking care of myself and documenting my experiences with gang stalking as I go along. And that is my sole purpose in uploading these videos, is to document and expose gang stalking and everything that it entails and all of its movements and operations. Now, another aspect of gang stalking that must be talked about outside of what I call the semi-law enforcement element, in which just about every establishment you can think of, retail operations, banks, police departments, sheriff's departments, malls, high-rise condominiums, apartment complexes, shopping centers, they all employ private security contractors to look like shoppers, act like shoppers. They're in unmarked cars, they drive around these locations, and they're constantly on the lookout for suspicious activity that they can report to either the police or a higher investigative agency. There are so many of these private security firms in the United States that it makes gang stalking possible. Especially with the digital age, and especially with the advent of the GPS location mechanism. And with that, you have a surveillance state that is mobile, complete, ever-pervasive, and immortal. Because it uses word of mouth on the street. It's got gang stalkers 24/7 walking up and down the street, ready to give word of mouth to any police agency or anybody that could get them to a police agency. You have the surveillance mechanism with the cameras on the side of every building, which I don't disagree with, but it's there. You have the private security mechanism, and banks, jewelers, restaurants, they all employ private security contractors in addition to the other corporate entities that I've named. You have the private security mechanism, and you have the sheriff's deputies, the police officers, the firefighters, the EMS, and any private security firms that these entities do business with, to keep an eye on the streets, to keep an eye on everybody at every corner, especially targeted individuals, though, to make sure that there's no terrorist activity going on. And these mechanisms are all made possible by the Patriot Act and other similar surveillance acts that were passed in the wake of 9/11. Okay, so the surveillance mechanism, the eye in the sky mechanism, the private law enforcement mechanism, regular police, regular military, regular sheriff's departments, they all work in conjunction to keep an eye on things. In addition to banks, retail operations, high-rise condos, corporate subdivisions of houses, apartment complexes, and any other living arrangements you could possibly think of. Any corporate entity of any note and of any size does business with private security contractors in the United States. People that keep an eye on everything at all times, oftentimes in unmarked cars, and under the watchful eye of people who do not look like anything but United States citizens going about their business. But they are not simply United States citizens going about their business. They are gang stalkers, and they are people who are being commissioned to be professional nuisances to a person that they don't know, and that they will never know, as a part of some so-called security mechanism. And a person can be recommended to gang stalking. A parent can go to their local police or their local sheriff or even a private security firm and say, hey, listen, I have a child that is unruly, they're moody, I think he's mentally ill, he's withdrawn, he's angry, he's always got these outbursts of violence that just come out of him sometimes. He scares me, he scares his brother, he scares his sister, he scares his father, he scares his family, his classmates are afraid of him, he's doing bad in school, his teachers are afraid of him, he's breaking all the rules, he's not performing in school like he's supposed to be, he watches violent material on television, he plays violent video games, he visits strange websites, he doesn't go to church, he doesn't respect his parents, he doesn't respect the service that police officers and military personnel do, he doesn't pray, he dresses in a style that is unseemly, he doesn't have a girlfriend, he doesn't have any friends, he's always yelling and screaming, he's always asking for stuff, he doesn't work, and the list goes on and on forever. There's a million things that can be said, but when a parent tries to get one of their kids thrown into a gang stalking campaign, these are the types of things that they say about him. To the police, to the sheriff's department, to that cousin that has those types of connections, to try to make this person a threat in the eyes of federal, state, and local law enforcement and the military. And it's a shame, but a lot of gang stalking, a lot of what you would call the referral process, where a person gets referred into a gang stalking campaign, is word of mouth. Stuff their so-called family and friends say about them. There are also other factors that can contribute to that, like an inheritance, which I was told a mere 6 months ago that I had, and I didn't know it my entire life. And there are other things too. I've mentioned before in previous videos, whistleblowing on companies or police departments, a nasty divorce, which that's one I've never fully understood why, but that's something that can land somebody in a gang stalking campaign. Making the wrong enemy. Okay, that shows me that the gang stalking world is a good old boy network. Hey, you don't like this person? We'll check him out. If we don't like what we see, first give us a statement on him. We'll check him out. We'll spy on him for a few years. If we don't like what we see, we'll put him in a full-blown gang stalking campaign for the rest of his life. How's that sound, buddy? Yeah, that sounds good, man. He said something about my wife that I didn't particularly care for, and plus I don't like the way he looks at my daughter, and on top of that, I've seen some of the stuff he writes, and I don't agree with it. I think he's un-American. I think he's an extremist. I think he's a radical. I don't like his diet either. I think he sets a bad example for our youth, and I think you guys ought to go ahead and put him in a gang stalking campaign. You see, I'm just being goofy right now, but obviously some things like that are being said by somebody, and I use the country accent because that's how I really used to talk. I'm born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's how everybody talks down there. I lived in the Midwest for close to 20 years, so I lost my accent, but there was one time where I used to talk like that. And everybody around me in Knoxville used to talk like that, so I got the dialect and the accent down cold. But anyhow, I digress. At the end of the day, stuff like that really is being said. Whether it's by Southerners, Northerners, Midwesterners, Westerners, it doesn't matter. There could be foreign influences in gang stalking for all I know. Now, what foreign influences? I don't know. I mean, what countries is America close enough to where that other country will help them monitor people without a court order? Or with a court order, just without that person's knowledge. It's kind of like kidnapping somebody. At some point, you target a person for kidnapping, and then you execute how you're going to take them out of society. Now, how do you do that? Some people do it the old-fashioned way. Wait till that person, you spy on that person and get their routine down, their daily routine. Then you run up to them dressed in all black with a ski mask, and you either knock them out with a hit on the head or with some sort of a chemical under their nose. And you grab them, put them in the car, and you take off. Some people do it other ways. Some people entice them. Hey, I've been watching you for a while, and I think I'd like to talk to you, get to know you better. How about a date this Saturday? Or some icebreaker to that effect. And if the person consents, you meet them up, and instead of going to Benihana's You show them a gun and say, okay, this is what's really about to happen. And you take off with that person. Okay? Based on the news stories I've read, and based on the many high-profile kidnappings that have happened in the United States over the past 30 years, all of them fall into one of the two categories. Unless it's a child kidnapping where some pedophile goes into a neighborhood with a box of candy and entices kids to get in the car so they can get a candy and he drives off. We've seen those. But that's kind of how gang stalking operates. A targeted individual is scoped out for a long time. It's not instantaneous. They have to be properly placed into a gang stalking campaign. And once their routine has been scoped out and enough people have said enough bad things about them and enough of their behavior is deemed threatening by various military and law enforcement agencies, boom, he's in a gang stalking campaign for the rest of his life. And it will be impossible for that person to prosper in anything that they do because they constantly have gang stalking influences around them, in person and online, that are constantly accusing them of being a subversive influence to the American way of life, and they're constantly being provoked into showing people that they're subversive. So for example, if you're a well-mannered, targeted individual, eventually the gang stalkers will come up with a plan, and again, all of the entities I've named earlier are in on this. From the military on down to churches, they all participated in it in some form or fashion, and they know about it. Now, whether they know exactly how deep it goes, who knows? But information on gang stalking is out there, and I document it myself quite frequently on my phone. And we've seen quite a bit of obstruction since I've started. And I got about 20 seconds left of recording before my storage capacity is up. So I'm just going to say this: gang stalking is real, it's pervasive, it's unconstitutional, and all TIs who are in this thing ought to be freed under the Constitution and its merits.